They mocked the old human ship drifting in deep space, a broken relic floating in silence. The alien fleet surrounded it from every side, weapons charged, ready to erase it. They fired at full power. The beams vanished without a trace. No impact, no explosion, no damage. The old ship remained still and calm. Systems inside began to wake. One by one, alien ships went dark. Entire fleet losing control in seconds. No engines, no weapons. No escape. Panic spread across the command ship. The commander stared in disbelief. The human ship was still untouched. A final signal echoed through space, and then everything went silent. Far away from the busy trade routes and shining civilizations, deep in the silent darkness of space, something unusual drifted slowly through the void. It was a human ship, old, worn, and almost forgotten. Its metal body was covered in scratches, burns, and marks from battles that must have happened long ago. Some parts of its surface looked like they had been repaired many times, while others seemed untouched for decades. It did not shine like the modern ships of advanced civilizations. Instead, it looked tired, like it had seen too much. There were no nearby stars to light its path, only faint, distant glows that barely reached it. The ship moved quietly, without any rush, as if it had no destination, or perhaps had already reached it long ago. Its engines were weak compared to modern standards, giving off only a soft, almost invisible trail of energy. Any normal scanner would struggle to even notice it. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was calm but serious. The corridors were narrow, with dim lights flickering slightly, giving the whole place an old and heavy feeling. The walls carried signs of time, small dents, faded paint, and old markings that told stories no one spoke about anymore. It didn't feel like a ship built for comfort. It felt like a ship built for survival. In the control room, a small crew quietly did their work. There were no loud conversations, no panic, no excitement. Each person moved with purpose, like they had done the same tasks 1,000 times before. Their faces showed experience, not fear. They were not young explorers chasing adventure. They were people who had already seen what space could do. At the center of the room sat the captain, an older man with calm eyes and a steady expression. His hair had started to turn gray, and his face carried lines that spoke of years of responsibility and hard decisions. He watched the screens in front of him without showing much emotion. To someone else, the empty space outside might look peaceful, but he knew better. Space was never truly empty. A quiet beep broke the silence. One of the crew members looked at a small monitor, then frowned slightly. "Captain, we're picking up something," he said in a low voice. The captain didn't react immediately. He slowly turned his head toward the screen. "What kind of signal?" he asked. "It's weak," the crew member replied, "but it's not natural. It looks like a scan. Someone is searching." The room grew slightly more tense, though no one showed panic. Another crew member began adjusting the systems, trying to get a clearer reading. "It's coming from far away," she added. "Very far. But whoever it is, they've noticed us." The captain leaned back slightly in his chair, his eyes still fixed on the screen. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, in a calm voice, he spoke. "Don't respond. Keep all systems low." "Yes, Captain," the crew replied. The ship did not change its path. It did not speed up or slow down. It simply continued drifting, as if it had not been noticed at all. But inside, every crew member understood the situation. Being found in deep space, especially this far from known regions, was never a good sign. Minutes passed slowly. The weak signal became clearer. It was not just a simple scan anymore. It was detailed, focused, and advanced. Whoever was behind it had powerful technology. They were studying the ship, analyzing every part of it. "They're scanning everything," one crew member said quietly. "Hull, energy output, weapon systems, even internal structure." "And what do they see?" the captain asked. The crew member hesitated for a second before answering. "They see an old ship, weak engines, outdated weapons, minimal defense. To them, we probably look like scrap." A faint, almost unnoticeable smile appeared on the captain's face, but it disappeared just as quickly. "Good," he said softly. The crew exchanged brief glances but said nothing. They trusted him. They always had. Outside, far beyond the visible range of the human ship, something massive moved through space. A fleet, large, powerful, and filled with advanced alien vessels, had picked up the signal. Their ships were sleek and shining, designed with precision and power. Their technology was far beyond what most civilizations could even imagine. When they first detected the human ship, they were curious. But as their scans completed, curiosity quickly turned into amusement. On the command ship of the alien fleet, a tall figure stood in front of a large display. The alien commander observed the data with clear confidence. His species had conquered many systems. They had faced strong enemies and crushed them without difficulty. Compared to that, this human ship looked like nothing. A single vessel, one of his officers said. Old design, weak energy signature, no real threat detected. Another officer added, "It's barely operational by our standards, possibly lost or abandoned." The commander let out a quiet, almost mocking sound. "And this is what humanity sends into deep space?" he said. Pathetic. The officers around him seemed to agree. To them, this was not a battle. It was not even a challenge. It was something to laugh at. "Shall we destroy it?" one of them asked. The commander shook his head slightly. "Not yet. Record everything. This will serve as a reminder of how far we have surpassed them." Back on the human ship, the crew could now detect multiple signals. The single scan had turned into many. There was no doubt anymore. They were being watched by a fleet. "They've brought friends," one crew member said quietly. "Yes," the captain replied, still calm. "They always do." There was no fear in his voice. No surprise either. It was as if he had expected this moment all along. The ship continued its slow journey through the darkness, surrounded by an unseen enemy that believed it had already won. The humans did nothing to prove them wrong. They stayed quiet, weak, and unimportant. At least, that's what it looked like. But deep inside the ship, hidden behind old panels and forgotten systems, something waited. Something that had not been used in a very long time. Something that the aliens could not see and would not understand until it was too late. The alien fleet did not rush. They moved with slow confidence, like hunters who already knew their prey could not escape. Their ships spread out in perfect formation, surrounding the small human vessel from every direction. To them, it was not a battle. It was a moment of control, a demonstration of power. From a distance, the difference between the two was almost embarrassing. The alien ships were large, smooth, and glowing with advanced energy systems. Their surfaces reflected faint starlight like polished mirrors. Every part of their design showed perfection. No damage, no wear, no weakness. In comparison, the human ship looked like a broken piece of history, drifting where it did not belong. Inside the alien command ship, the atmosphere was relaxed. Crew members moved casually, some even showing amusement as they looked at the data on their screens. The human ship had already been fully scanned multiple times, and every result said the same thing: outdated, underpowered, and harmless. "Energy levels are extremely low," one officer reported. "Weapons systems appear primitive. Defensive capabilities are almost non-existent." Another officer added with a slight smirk, "This ship wouldn't survive even a minor skirmish. It's barely holding itself together." A few of them chuckled quietly. For a fleet that had destroyed powerful civilizations, this moment felt almost like a joke. The alien commander stood at the center, his tall figure calm and proud. His eyes remained fixed on the display, watching the small human ship drift silently in the middle of his fleet. He had seen many enemies before, some strong, some desperate, but never something this disappointing. "Is there any sign of communication?" he asked. "No, Commander," an officer replied. "The ship is silent. No outgoing signals, no attempts to respond." The commander tilted his head slightly. "Strange," he said. "Most species beg when they realize their situation." Another officer spoke. "Perhaps they know it's pointless." That idea seemed to please the commander. "Good," he said. "At least they understand their place." Meanwhile, inside the human ship, nothing had changed on the surface. The crew continued their work quietly. No alarms were blaring. No one was shouting orders. Everything remained controlled and calm, despite the fact that they were now completely surrounded. "They formed a full perimeter," one crew member reported, eyes focused on the display. "No gaps. They're not letting us leave." The captain nodded slightly. "Of course they're not." Another crew member looked at the incoming data. "Their ships? They're advanced. Much more than what we usually see." The captain didn't seem impressed. "Advanced doesn't mean wise," he said calmly. The crew fell silent again. There was something about the captain's tone that made them feel steady, even in this situation. He wasn't worried, and that meant something. Outside, the alien fleet began moving closer. not aggressively, but slowly, tightening the circle. It was like they were playing with the human ship, enjoying the moment before ending it. On the alien command ship, the commander gave a new order. "Prepare recording systems," he said. The officers looked at him with interest. "Recording, Commander?" "Yes," he replied. "This will be shared across our network. Let others see what humanity truly is now." A few officers smiled at the idea. This was not just about destroying a ship anymore. It was about sending a message of superiority. "All systems ready," one officer confirmed. "We are recording." The commander stepped forward slightly, his gaze still locked on the human vessel. "Begin a wide-spectrum broadcast," he ordered. "I want every nearby system to witness this." "Yes, Commander." Within moments, signals spread across space, carrying a live feed of the situation. The small, weak human ship surrounded by a powerful alien fleet. To anyone watching, the outcome was obvious. Back on the human ship, the crew detected the broadcast immediately. "They're transmitting," one of them said. "Wide range. This is being shared." The captain let out a slow breath. "Of course it is," he said quietly. "They're making a show out of this," another crew member added, a hint of frustration in his voice. The captain turned his head slightly, looking at the main screen. The alien ships were now clearly visible, surrounding them like a wall of steel and light. "Let them," he said. The crew member frowned slightly. "Sir, they think we're nothing." The captain's expression didn't change. "That's exactly what we need them to think." The room fell silent again. Outside, one of the alien ships moved closer than the others. Its weapon systems powered up slightly, not enough to attack, but enough to show what it was capable of. It was a display of dominance. On the command ship, an officer spoke again. "Commander, the human vessel is not responding at all. No change in behavior." The commander watched carefully. "Interesting," he said. "No panic, no attempt to escape. Either they are extremely foolish, or they have already accepted their fate." Another officer laughed lightly. "I think it's the first one." The commander didn't laugh. He continued observing, his sharp eyes noticing every small detail. "Perhaps," he said, though his voice suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. For a brief moment, something about the situation felt unusual. The ship was too calm, too still. But the data showed nothing threatening, and logic overpowered instinct. "Bring us closer," the commander ordered. The fleet responded instantly. The ships tightened their formation, reducing the distance between them and the human vessel. Now, the old ship was completely trapped, with no space left to move. Inside the human ship, the proximity alarms blinked softly, but no loud warnings sounded. Everything was still under control. "They're closing in," a crew member said. The captain nodded once. "Maintain position." "Yes, Captain." The human ship did not move. It did not react. It simply stayed there, quiet and weak, just as the aliens expected. But beneath that quiet surface, something subtle began to change. Deep within the ship, systems that had remained inactive for a long time started to wake up. Very slowly, very carefully. So carefully that even advanced alien scanners could not detect the shift. Energy began to flow through hidden pathways, old circuits lighting up one by one. In the control room, a faint new light appeared on one of the panels. Only the captain seemed to notice it. His eyes moved toward it for just a second, then back to the main screen. Outside, the alien fleet completed its formation. The human ship was now fully surrounded, with no chance of escape. At least, that's what it looked like. On the alien command ship, the commander raised his hand slightly. "Prepare to engage," he said. The officers immediately focused. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Weapon systems across the fleet began charging, their energy levels rising rapidly. The glow from their ships became brighter, more intense. It was a clear sign of what was coming next. And still, the human ship did nothing. It remained silent, motionless, and weak. A perfect target. Or at least that's what the aliens believed. Inside the old human ship, everything felt strangely normal, even though a powerful alien fleet had completely surrounded them. The walls still hummed softly with the same low vibration, the dim lights flickered in the same slow rhythm, and the crew continued their duties as if nothing unusual was happening. It was not because they didn't understand the danger, it was because they had faced situations like this before. The control room remained quiet. No one raised their voice. No one panicked. Each crew member sat at their station, eyes focused on their screens, hands moving calmly across worn-out controls. The equipment looked outdated compared to modern standards. Buttons slightly faded, panels scratched, screens not as sharp, but everything worked perfectly in its own way. This ship might have looked weak from the outside, but inside, it felt steady, reliable. At the center of the room, the captain sat in his chair, watching the main display. The image showed dozens of alien ships surrounding them from every direction, bright, powerful, and perfectly arranged. It was the kind of sight that would make most people feel hopeless. But the captain didn't look worried. His face was calm, almost unreadable. His eyes moved slowly from one part of the screen to another, carefully studying the alien fleet. He wasn't just looking, he was observing, analyzing, understanding. Every small movement of the enemy ships, every change in their formation, every signal they sent, he noticed it all. One of the younger crew members finally spoke, breaking the silence. "Captain, their weapons are charging." His voice was controlled, but there was a hint of tension in it. "I see that," the captain replied quietly. Another crew member turned slightly in his seat. "They're not rushing. It's like they're enjoying this." A faint pause followed. "Yes," the captain said. "They think this is already over." No one replied to that. Everyone in the room understood what he meant. A woman sitting at the navigation console looked at her screen carefully. "There's still no communication from them," she said. "No warnings, no demands." "They don't see a reason to talk," another crew member added. "To them, we're not worth it." The captain leaned back slightly in his chair. "That's their mistake." Again, his tone was calm. Not angry, not proud, just certain. The crew exchanged quick glances but stayed focused. There was something about the captain that gave them confidence. He wasn't the kind of leader who spoke loudly or gave dramatic speeches, but every word he said carried weight. If he wasn't worried, then there was a reason. Still, the situation outside was impossible to ignore. On the main screen, one of the alien ships moved closer, its surface glowing brighter as its weapons charged. Others followed, adjusting their positions slightly, making sure there were no gaps in their formation. The human ship was completely trapped. "They've locked us in," the navigation officer said. "No escape path." The captain nodded once. "We're not leaving," he said. The words sounded simple, but they carried a deeper meaning. One of the crew members hesitated before speaking again. "Captain, permission to power up secondary systems?" There was a brief pause. "Not yet," the captain replied. The crew member looked slightly confused but didn't question the order. Understood. The truth was, there was more to this ship than what it showed. Everyone on board knew that. But there was a reason those systems stayed hidden. A reason they were not activated unless absolutely necessary. The captain's eyes moved again, this time toward a small, almost unnoticed panel on his side. A faint light blinked there, soft and steady. It was different from the rest of the ship's systems, older and far more important. He looked at it for a second, then turned his attention back to the main display. "Status report," he said. "Hull integrity stable," one crew member responded. "Core systems running at minimum output," another added. "Enemy fleet maintaining formation. Weapons at high charge," said the tactical officer. The captain listened carefully, then gave a small nod. "Good." That was all he said. Outside, the alien fleet continued preparing. Their ships glowed brighter as energy built up in their weapons. It was clear they were getting ready to fire. But they were taking their time, stretching the moment, making sure everything was recorded. Back inside the human ship, the tension was growing, but it was quiet tension. Controlled. Focused. The young crew member who had spoken earlier looked at the main screen again. "They're going to attack soon," he said. "Yes," the captain replied. "And we're just going to wait?" he asked carefully. The captain turned his head slightly, looking at him. There was no anger in his expression, only calm understanding. "We're going to let them make the first move," he said. "Why?" the young man asked. The captain held his gaze for a moment before answering. "Because they need to believe they're in control." The room fell silent again. Those words stayed in the air, heavy but clear. The crew didn't fully understand everything, but they trusted him. Time seemed to slow down as the alien fleet prepared to fire. Seconds felt longer. Every small sound inside the ship became more noticeable. The hum of the systems, the soft beeping of monitors, the quiet breathing of the crew. Then, something changed. Deep inside the ship, far below the control room, hidden systems continued to wake up. Energy flowed through pathways that had not been used in years. Old mechanisms moved slowly, almost silently. Layers of protection activated one by one, hidden behind the ship's weak outer appearance. None of this showed on the main systems. None of it appeared on scans. It was like the ship had a second life, one that stayed completely invisible. In the control room, a new light blinked softly on a panel near the captain. This time, one of the senior crew members noticed it. He didn't say anything. He just looked at the captain. The captain gave the smallest nod. That was enough. Outside, the alien commander raised his hand, signaling the final stage of their attack. Weapons across the fleet reached full charge. Bright energy gathered at the front of their ships, ready to be released. Inside the human ship, the crew remained at their stations. No alarms, no panic, no fear, just silence and readiness. The young crew member took a slow breath, his eyes fixed on the screen. "They're about to fire," he said quietly. The captain looked straight ahead, his voice steady and calm. "Hold position." And in that moment, surrounded by a powerful enemy that believed victory was certain, the old human ship did nothing. It didn't run. It didn't fight. It simply waited, like it had done many times before, like it knew exactly what was about to happen next. The moment finally came. Outside, the alien fleet reached full power. Their weapons glowed brighter than before, filling the darkness of space with intense light. Energy gathered at the front of their ships, forming massive beams that could easily destroy entire cruisers in seconds. To them, this was nothing more than a simple attack, quick, clean, and final. On the alien command ship, the commander stood tall, watching the human vessel at the center of the formation. His expression showed complete confidence. There was no doubt in his mind about the outcome. "Fire," he said calmly. The order spread instantly across the fleet. In the next second, space itself seemed to light up. Dozens of powerful energy beams shot forward at the same time, all aimed directly at the old human ship. The attack was overwhelming, far more force than needed. It wasn't just about destroying the target, it was about making a statement. From a distance, it looked like the human ship had no chance at all. Inside the human vessel, the crew saw it coming. "They've fired," one of them said, his voice steady but tense. On the main screen, the beams grew closer in an instant, bright, unstoppable, deadly. The young crew member tightened his grip on the controls, his eyes wide but focused. Every instinct told him this was the end. But the captain didn't move. He sat exactly as before, calm and still, watching the attack approach. His face showed no fear, no urgency. "Hold," he said quietly. The beams reached the ship, and then nothing happened. There was no explosion, no impact, no damage. The beams simply vanished. It was as if they had never existed. For a brief moment, everything became completely still. Inside the human ship, the crew blinked in confusion. The young crew member looked at the screen again, trying to understand what he had just seen. "They missed?" he asked. "No," another crew member said slowly. "That wasn't a miss." The captain remained silent, his eyes still on the display. Outside, the alien fleet froze. The beams they had fired, powerful enough to destroy entire fleets, had made direct contact. Their aim was perfect. Their systems showed no error. And yet, the human ship was still there, completely untouched. On the alien command ship, the officers stared at their screens in disbelief. "What just happened?" one of them said. "That's not possible," another added. "Our weapons hit the target. There should be nothing left." The commander's expression changed slightly. The confidence in his eyes was replaced by something else, confusion, and the smallest hint of concern. "Run the data again," he ordered. "We already have," an officer replied quickly. "Impact confirmed. Energy output was at maximum. There is no explanation." The commander stepped closer to the display, studying it carefully. The human ship was still drifting in the same position, unchanged. No damage, no reaction, nothing. "Scan the target again," he said. Multiple scanning systems activated at once, focusing entirely on the human vessel. They analyzed its structure, its energy, its systems, everything. The results came back the same as before. Old, weak, harmless. The commander narrowed his eyes. "Impossible," he said quietly. Back inside the human ship, the crew slowly realized what had happened. "They didn't do anything to us," the young crew member said, still trying to process it. A senior crew member shook his head slightly. "No, they did. It just didn't work. How? He asked. No one answered. The captain finally leaned forward just a little, his eyes calm as always. Because they don't understand what they're fighting, he said. The crew looked at him, waiting for more, but he didn't explain further. Outside, the alien fleet began to react. Some ships adjusted their positions slightly, as if trying to get a better angle. Others started charging their weapons again, this time with more power. They're preparing a second strike, the tactical officer reported. The captain nodded once. Let them. There was no urgency in his voice, no sign that anything had changed. But something had changed. Deep within the human ship, hidden systems had fully activated. Invisible fields surrounded the vessel, fields that bent energy, absorbed it, erased it before it could even make contact. Technology so advanced, so old, that it no longer followed the rules the aliens understood. To the alien scanners, nothing had changed. To reality itself, everything had. On the alien command ship, tension began to spread. The earlier confidence was gone. In its place was uncertainty. Commander, should we increase power levels? One officer asked. Yes, the commander replied without hesitation. Maximum output? I want that ship destroyed. The officers quickly followed the order. Across the fleet, weapon systems began charging again. This time brighter, stronger, more dangerous than before. The energy buildup was massive, far beyond the first attack. They're going all in now, one of the human crew members said. The young crew member swallowed slightly. If that didn't work, will this? The captain didn't even look away from the screen. No, he said simply. That single word brought a strange sense of calm to the room. Outside, the alien fleet fired again. This time, the attack was even more powerful. The beams were larger, brighter, more intense. They filled space with blinding light as they rushed toward the human ship. Inside, the crew watched closely. The beams hit, and once again, they disappeared. No explosion, no impact, no damage, just gone. It was as if the universe itself refused to let the attack exist. The silence that followed was heavier than before. On the alien command ship, no one spoke for several seconds. The screens showed the same result again. No damage, no change. The commander's hand slowly tightened behind his back. This is not possible, he said, his voice lower now. But the evidence was right in front of him. Something was wrong. Something they did not understand. Back on the human ship, the captain finally allowed himself the smallest breath of satisfaction. They've taken the bait, he said quietly. The crew looked at him again, this time with a bit more understanding. The aliens had shown their strength. Now they were starting to question it. And that was exactly where the real battle would begin. For a few long seconds at the second attack, space remained completely silent. The alien fleet had used more power than necessary, more than enough to erase the human ship from existence. But once again, the result was the same. Nothing. The old human vessel still floated in the center, untouched, unmoved, as if the attacks had never even reached it. The bright glow from the alien weapons slowly faded, leaving behind a strange emptiness. This time, the silence felt different. It was no longer calm. It was heavy, filled with confusion and growing fear. Inside the alien command ship, no one spoke at first. The officers stared at their screens, trying to understand what they were seeing. Their technology had never failed like this before. Their weapons were designed to break shields, melt metal, and destroy anything in their path. But here, they had done absolutely nothing. Report, the commander said, his voice lower than before. All systems functioning normally, one officer replied quickly. Weapons performed exactly as expected. Target status? The officer hesitated for a second. No damage detected. That answer made no sense, but it was the truth. The commander stepped closer to the display, his eyes locked on the human ship. It still looked the same, old, weak, barely holding together. There were no visible shields, no signs of advanced defense systems, nothing that could explain what had just happened. But something was clearly there, something hidden. Meanwhile, inside the human ship, the atmosphere had shifted, but only slightly. The crew remained calm, but now there was a quiet awareness moving through the room. They had crossed a line. The enemy had shown their full strength, and now it was time. The captain slowly stood up from his chair. That small movement immediately caught everyone's attention. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. But the moment he stood, the entire room seemed to focus on him. Status, he said calmly. All systems stable. one crew member replied. Defensive field holding perfectly. Energy reserves? More than sufficient. The captain gave a small nod, then looked at the main screen again. The alien fleet was still there, but their formation was no longer as perfect as before. Some ships had shifted slightly, as if unsure of what to do next. They're confused, the captain said. Yes, sir, another crew member replied. They don't understand what's happening. The captain's expression remained steady. Good. He took a few steps forward, his eyes now focused not just on the enemy, but on something deeper, something beyond the visible moment. Prepare to wake the system, he said. There was a brief pause. The words were simple, but everyone in the room understood their meaning. One of the senior crew members turned slightly. Are you sure, Captain? He asked quietly. The captain looked at him. They've already forced our hand, he said. We don't have a reason to hide anymore. The crew member nodded. Understood. He turned back to his console and began entering a sequence. Across the ship, something began to change. At first, it was subtle. A low vibration spread through the walls, different from the usual hum of the ship. Lights that had always been dim flickered slightly, then became steady. Old panels that hadn't been touched in years slowly came to life, glowing faintly with energy. Deep within the ship, systems that had been asleep for a very long time began to awaken. Energy started flowing. Not like before, not weak or limited, but powerful and controlled. It moved through hidden pathways, activating layers of technology that had never appeared on any scan. The ship was no longer just drifting. It was waking up. In the control room, new readings appeared on the screens. At first, they looked strange, unknown symbols, unfamiliar data patterns. Then slowly, they began to stabilize. System core coming online, one crew member reported. Power levels increasing, another added. This is far beyond our standard output. The young crew member looked at his screen in shock. Where is all this energy coming from? No one answered him directly. The captain simply watched. Outside, the alien fleet immediately noticed the change. Commander, the target's energy levels are rising, one officer reported. How much? The commander asked. The officer looked confused. We're not sure. The readings are inconsistent. They don't match any known system. Another officer added, it's like the ship is changing. The commander narrowed his eyes. Impossible. But even as he said that, he could see it. The human ship was no longer completely still. Small lights began to appear along its surface, faint at first, then slowly growing brighter. The damaged, worn-out look of the ship didn't disappear, but now there was something else beneath it. Something powerful. Scan it again, the commander ordered. We are scanning, the officer replied. But the data doesn't make sense. We're detecting energy, but we can't identify its source or structure. For the first time, uncertainty turned into real concern. Back inside the human ship, the transformation continued. The vibration grew slightly stronger, but it wasn't unstable. It was controlled, precise. Every system activated in perfect sequence, as if following a plan designed long ago. The captain walked slowly toward a central console that had remained dark until now. As he approached, the surface lit up automatically, responding to his presence. A soft, unfamiliar interface appeared, different from the rest of the ship. He placed his hand on it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire ship seemed to react. A deeper energy pulse moved through every system, stronger than before. Primary system fully awake, a crew member reported, his voice filled with quiet awe. Synchronization complete, another added. The captain kept his hand on the console, his eyes focused ahead. Now, he said calmly. Outside, the human ship moved. It was a small movement, but it was the first real action it had taken since the beginning. The ship adjusted its position slightly, turning just enough to face one section of the alien fleet. The movement was slow, but deliberate. On the alien command ship, alarms began to trigger. Commander, the target is moving. I can see that, he replied sharply. Lock all weapons. Prepare for immediate response. But even as the fleet reacted, something felt different. The human ship was no longer just a target. It felt aware. Back inside, the crew watched the screen as the alien ships shifted, trying to respond. They're getting nervous, the young crew member said. The captain finally removed his hand from the console and returned to his position. Yes, he said quietly. For the first time, there was a faint change in his expression. Not a smile, not excitement, but something close to readiness. They should be. The old human ship, once seen as weak and useless, was no longer hiding. It had awakened. And whatever it truly was, the aliens were about to find out. The moment the old human ship fully awakened, the feeling in space changed completely. Before, it had been quiet and controlled by the alien fleet. They were the hunters, and the human ship was supposed to be the helpless target. But now, something had shifted. The balance was no longer the same. The human ship did not rush forward or fire any visible weapons. It did something far more unsettling. It simply stayed calm, controlled, and precise. Its surface glowed faintly with a new kind of energy, something that didn't match any known system. It didn't look aggressive, but it didn't look weak anymore either. Inside the alien command ship, alarms were now active across multiple systems. "Commander, the target's energy readings are still rising." "Stabilize sensors," the commander ordered. "I want clear data." "We're trying, but the readings keep changing. It's like the system is adapting." The commander's expression hardened. "All ships, prepare for immediate attack. Do not hold back." This time, there was no arrogance in his voice, only urgency. Across the fleet, alien ships repositioned quickly. Weapon systems powered up again, stronger and faster than before. They were no longer trying to make a show, they were preparing for a real fight. But the human ship moved first. Inside the control room, the captain stood calmly, watching everything. "Target their systems," he said. The order sounded simple, but it carried a deeper meaning. The tactical officer looked at his console. "Which system, Captain?" The captain didn't hesitate. "All of them." For a brief moment, the crew member paused, then nodded. "Understood." He activated the sequence. What happened next did not look like an attack. There were no missiles, no laser beams, no visible weapons firing from the human ship. In fact, from the outside, it looked like nothing had happened at all. But inside the alien fleet, everything began to go wrong. On one of the outer ships, the crew suddenly noticed something strange. "Power fluctuation detected," an officer said. "What? That's not possible," another replied. "We just calibrated." Before he could finish, the lights on their ship flickered, then went out. Across another ship, weapon systems that were fully charged suddenly shut down. "Commander, we've lost weapon control." "What?" the commander responded sharply. "Reset the system. We're trying. It's not responding." On a third ship, navigation systems failed completely. "We can't move. Engines are offline." Panic began to spread. One by one, ships across the fleet started experiencing the same problem. Systems that had been perfectly stable just seconds ago were now failing without any clear reason. Back on the human ship, the crew watched quietly. "It's working," the young crew member said, his voice filled with surprise. "Of course it is," the senior officer replied calmly. "What exactly are we doing?" he asked. The captain answered without looking away from the screen. "We're speaking a language they don't understand." The young crew member frowned slightly, but before he could ask more, the tactical officer spoke again. "Multiple targets affected. Their weapons are offline. Engines failing across several ships." The captain gave a small nod. "Continue." Outside, the alien fleet was falling into chaos. Ships that once moved in perfect formation were now drifting slightly out of position. Some tried to adjust, but their controls didn't respond. Others attempted to fire, but their weapons refused to activate. "Commander, we're losing control across the fleet," one officer reported, his voice no longer calm. The commander gripped the edge of his console tightly. "Find the source," he demanded. "This is an attack!" "But there are no incoming signals," another officer said. "No detectable weapons fire." "That's impossible," the commander snapped. But it wasn't. Whatever the human ship was doing, it wasn't something the alien technology could detect. It didn't follow the rules they understood. There were no beams to block, no missiles to intercept. It was silent, invisible, unstoppable. Back inside the human ship, the crew remained focused. "More ships going offline," one of them reported. "We're spreading through their entire network." The young crew member looked at the screen in disbelief. "We're not even firing anything." The captain finally spoke again. "We don't need to." He took a slow breath, then added, "This ship wasn't built to destroy enemies in the way they expect." The crew listened carefully. "It was built to end wars before they begin," he continued. Outside, another alien ship went dark. Its lights shut off, its engine stopped, and it drifted silently through space. Then another, and another. Within moments, the once powerful fleet began to look like a collection of lifeless objects. On the alien command ship, the situation was getting worse by the second. "Commander, we've lost control of over half the fleet." "Restore it," he shouted. "We can't. Systems aren't responding to any commands." The commander's confidence was gone now. In its place was something far more dangerous: fear. He looked at the main display again. The human ship was still there, still calm, still untouched. But now, it was clear. It wasn't weak. It wasn't outdated. It was something else entirely. "Focus all remaining power," the commander ordered, his voice tense. "Prepare one final attack." The officers hesitated but followed the command. Back on the human ship, the crew saw the change. "They're trying again," the tactical officer said. The captain nodded. "Let them try." "But their systems are already failing," the young crew member said. "Yes," the captain replied, "and they still don't understand why." Outside, a few remaining alien ships managed to charge their weapons. The energy was unstable now, flickering as their systems struggled to stay active. They fired. The beams were weaker this time, less controlled, but still dangerous. They reached the human ship, and once again, they disappeared, like they never existed. That was the moment everything truly broke. On the alien command ship, silence fell for a second before chaos returned even stronger. "It's useless," one officer said. "Nothing is working. Commander, we have to retreat." But even as those words were spoken, new errors appeared on every screen. "Navigation is down. Engines are not responding. We can't move." The commander stared at the display, his mind racing. They weren't just losing, they were trapped. Back inside the human ship, the final reports came in. "All enemy ships disabled," the tactical officer said slowly. The young crew member looked at the screen, amazed. "That's it?" The captain nodded once. "That's it." Outside, the alien fleet was no longer a threat. Dozens of ships floated silently in space, their systems dead, their power gone. What had once been a powerful armada was now nothing more than drifting metal. And through it all, the old human ship remained exactly where it was, calm, quiet, untouched, like it had always been in control. And for the first time, the truth became clear. This was never a fight, it was a lesson. The alien fleet was no longer an organized force. What once looked like a perfect wall of power across space had now turned into scattered, silent ships drifting without control. Engines were dead. Weapons were offline. Communication between vessels was breaking down one after another. The entire formation that once surrounded the human ship like a trap had now become a graveyard of metal. Inside the alien command ship, the situation was worse than anyone wanted to admit. "Commander, we've lost full control of navigation," one officer said, his voice shaking slightly. "Engineering reports complete system shutdown across multiple vessels," another added. "Fleet coordination is gone. We cannot regroup." The commander stood still in front of the main display. His eyes were locked on the human ship, which still remained in the center of it all. Calm, stable, unchanged. For the first time in his career, he did not have an answer. "Attempt emergency restart," he ordered. "We already tried, Commander," the technical officer replied. "Nothing responds. It's like the systems are locked out." That word hung in the air. Locked out. It didn't make sense. Their technology wasn't supposed to fail like this. It wasn't supposed to be controlled by anything outside their own command protocols. But reality was showing something different. One by one, reports kept coming in. Ship 17 is drifting. Ship 3 has lost all power. Ship 9 is unresponsive. The once powerful fleet was collapsing without a single visible enemy strike. Meanwhile, inside the human ship, everything remained calm. The crew stood at their stations, watching the final stage of the situation unfold. No one looked surprised anymore. The tension that had existed earlier was gone, replaced by quiet control. "Their entire fleet is down," one crew member said softly. The tactical officer confirmed it. No active weapons, no engines, no movement capability. The young crew member leaned forward slightly, staring at the screen. "So it's over?" The captain did not answer immediately. He kept watching the alien ships for a few seconds before speaking. "Not yet," he said calmly. That simple response made the room even quieter. Outside, the alien commander suddenly raised his voice. "All remaining ships, attempt regroup formation. Focus on central command signal." But there was no response from most vessels. A few tried to obey, but their movements were slow and unstable, like something was resisting every action. One officer turned toward the commander. "Sir, Even our command signals are being ignored. It's like they can't hear us anymore. The commander finally turned away from the screen and looked at him directly. Impossible, he said again, but this time his voice lacked conviction. Something was very wrong. This was not just defeat in battle. This was something deeper. The fleet was not being destroyed by weapons. It was being shut down at its core. And they still didn't understand how. Back on the human ship, the captain finally stepped away from the main console. He walked slowly toward the center of the control room, his footsteps steady and unhurried. Every crew member followed his movement with their eyes. "Status of the fleet?" he asked. "Completely disabled." The tactical officer replied. "No active resistance detected." The captain nodded slightly. "Good." The young crew member hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "Captain, they're still out there. Some ships are still intact. Why not finish it completely?" The captain looked at him. There was no anger in his expression, only calm understanding. "Because they've already lost," he said. The crew member didn't fully understand, but they're still alive. The captain turned back toward the screen. Being alive doesn't mean being dangerous. Outside, the alien ships floated helplessly. Some were completely dark. Others still had faint lights flickering inside, but no power to move or fight. A massive fleet that once ruled entire star systems was now reduced to silent wreckage in space. Then, suddenly, something changed. A single ship from the fleet attempted to send a signal. It was weak, broken, unstable, but it reached the human ship. Inside the alien command ship, the communications officer looked up. "Commander, we are receiving a reply channel." The commander immediately reacted. "Open it." Static filled the screen for a moment. Then, slowly, a transmission appeared. It was not a weapon signal, not a threat. It was a message request. The commander stared at it. A request. From them. The humans were not attacking further. They were responding. Back on the human ship, the captain observed the signal. "They want communication," the tactical officer said. The young crew member looked surprised. "After everything, they still want to talk?" The captain nodded slightly. "Yes." He paused for a moment, then gave a simple instruction. "Open channel." The room stayed silent as the connection was established. On the alien command ship, the screen flickered again. This time, the human ship appeared clearly. But now it looked different. It was no longer just an old ship. Now it looked stable, controlled, alive in a way they had not seen before. The alien commander took a step forward. For the first time, his voice was not confident. "What are you?" he asked. The question was not loud. It was not commanding. It was uncertain. Inside the human ship, the captain looked at the screen for a long moment before answering. His voice was calm, steady, and without emotion. "You attacked something you didn't understand." The alien commander clenched his fists. "We fired at you. We used full fleet power. Nothing should have survived." The captain's expression didn't change. "You didn't survive either," he replied. That statement made the commander pause. Outside, the fleet was already proof of that. The captain continued. "You didn't lose because we were stronger in the way you think," he said. "You lost because you were never in control of the system you entered." The alien officers looked at each other, confused. "The system?" one of them whispered. The commander looked back at the screen. "What system?" The captain paused for a second before answering. "This space is older than your fleet, and what you saw was only the surface." Silence followed. Even across the broken fleet, no one spoke. For the first time, the aliens realized something terrifying. They had not just fought a ship. They had triggered something far beyond their understanding. And now, there was no victory left to claim. Only realization and survival. The silence after the final transmission was unlike anything the alien commander had ever experienced. It was not the silence of peace, and it was not the silence of victory. It was something heavier, something final. Across the broken fleet, thousands of ships floated helplessly in space, all connected by the same reality. Nothing was working anymore. The human ship was still there on the main screen. Not damaged, not shaken, not changed, just present. Like it had always been in control of the situation from the very beginning. Inside the alien command ship, the officers waited for instructions, but no one spoke. The commander stared at the display, trying to process what he had just heard from the human captain. "You attacked something you didn't understand." Those words repeated in his mind again and again. Finally, he spoke, but his voice was no longer strong. "Explain. "What system is this?" he asked carefully. There was a long pause on the other side of the transmission. Inside the human ship, the captain stood still, watching the alien fleet through the screen. His crew remained silent behind him, waiting for his response. The control room was calm, but there was a deeper weight in the air now. Not tension, but completion. Like a chapter had already ended. The captain finally answered. "You thought you were surrounding a ship," he said slowly. "But you were entering a controlled zone." The alien commander frowned. "Controlled zone?" "Yes," the captain replied. "This ship is not just a vessel. It is part of a system designed long before your fleet existed." The alien officers exchanged confused looks. Even now, they still struggled to believe what they were hearing. Their minds refused to accept that something like this could exist without their knowledge. The commander tried again. "If this is a system, why did you not show it earlier?" The captain looked at the screen quietly. "Because you were not supposed to see it," he said. Those words made the room on the alien side feel colder. Back on the human ship, the crew watched their captain carefully. They had heard this explanation before in fragments, but now it was being revealed fully. The captain continued. "This system was created to protect humanity from threats that do not follow normal rules. It does not react like weapons. It reacts like correction." The word correction stayed in the air for a moment. The young crew member whispered, "Correction?" The senior officer nodded slightly. "That's what we were trained for." Outside, the alien fleet remained frozen. Some ships were still trying to recover basic functions, but nothing worked properly. It was as if the entire network they relied on had been silently disconnected from reality itself. The alien commander looked at his crew. "We need to retreat," he said finally. There was no pride left in his voice, only survival instinct. But even as he said it, one officer spoke carefully. "Commander, engines are still offline. We cannot move." The commander's expression tightened. For the first time, he realized something even worse. Retreat was not an option. Back inside the human ship, the captain watched the situation calmly. "They are trying to leave," one crew member reported. "They won't," the captain replied. The young crew member looked at him. "Why not?" "Because the system hasn't finished yet," the captain said quietly. Outside, something subtle began to happen again. It was not an explosion. It was not a weapon firing. It was a final stabilization of the field that had already taken control of the alien fleet. One by one, their systems locked into a safe state. Not destroyed, but completely disabled. Every ship was now held in place, unable to move, unable to attack, unable to escape. It was not punishment. It was containment. On the alien command ship, alarms that had been blaring earlier began to fade. Not because systems were repaired, but because they were being overridden completely. "Commander, all systems are locked," an officer said slowly. The commander closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "So this is it," he said quietly. No one responded. He turned back toward the human ship on the screen. For the first time, his tone changed. Not arrogance, not command, just understanding. "We were never your equals in this moment," he said. Inside the human ship, the captain listened. There was no satisfaction in his expression. No anger, no pride, just calm acknowledgement. "That is correct," he replied simply. The alien commander hesitated, then asked the final question. "What happens now?" The captain looked at the screen for a long time before answering. "That depends on your response," he said. The alien officers looked confused. The commander asked carefully, "Our response?" "Yes," the captain said. "You can choose to return and report what you have seen, or you can choose to continue misunderstanding it." A long silence followed. Then, slowly, the commander lowered his head. "We will report," he said. There was no fight left in that statement, only acceptance. Back on the human ship, the captain nodded once. "Good." The transmission began to close, but before it fully ended, the commander spoke one last time. "What should we tell our empire?" The captain paused. Then he answered with a calm, final voice. "Tell them you found something that does not belong to your level of understanding." The transmission ended. The screen went dark. Inside the alien fleet, silence spread again. But this time, it was different. It was no longer confusion. It was realization. Slowly, ship by ship, the officers understood that what they had encountered was not a normal enemy, not a rival fleet, not even a hidden civilization. It was something far older in design, far deeper in purpose, a system that did not fight wars. It ended them. Back on the human ship, the crew remained silent for a moment after the connection closed. Then the young crew member finally spoke. "So, it's over?" The captain turned away from the screen and walked back toward his chair. "Yes," he said quietly. He sat down again, as if nothing had changed. Outside the window, the alien fleet still drifted silently in space. Powerful ships that once believed they were unstoppable now floated like lifeless shadows. No explosions, no destruction, just complete stillness. The human ship slowly adjusted its path, not rushing, not celebrating, just continuing its journey. The crew returned to their stations. Systems were powered back down to minimal levels. The hidden energy faded again beneath the surface, returning the ship to its old, worn appearance. From the outside, it once again looked like just a broken relic of space. But now, everyone who had seen it knew the truth. As the ship moved away from the battlefield, the captain looked one last time at the fading fleet. Not with pride, not with anger, but with memory. Because in his mind, this was not a victory. It was just another moment where humanity had been forced to remind the universe of something very simple. They were never as weak as they appeared. And as the old human ship disappeared into the darkness of space once again, it left behind a silence that would travel across civilizations, long after the fleet itself was gone.